Walked into work that day thinking I was going to pass. I genuinely believed I had done everything right, but within an hour, I was terminated. But to understand why that moment hit the way it did, I have to take you way back. I have to take you back to 2016. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the BLN. This is one of the more uncomfortable episodes I've recorded, and I've debated even talking about this publicly. But there's, I think, real value into talking about failure in an honest way, because most people talk about success after they're already rebuilt it. Very few people talk about what it feels like when identity takes a hit in real time. This episode, it's about ego, ownership, identity, and preparation. But before I go any further, this is not me attacking anybody. This is not trying to expose anyone, not trying to win an argument or say that I was right, because I don't think I was. But because when enough time passes, you stop caring about the win and you start caring more about the experience and what the experience was trying to teach you. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius wrote that while running an empire under war and plague and political chaos. I had to learn the hard way by getting fired. At that point in my life, I had a lot of identity that was tied to being a flight paramedic. And any first responder, anybody in the first responder culture can understand this. Your career can quietly become your entire identity without you realizing it. The patch, the title, the environment, the respect, the skill set, right? And there's a lot of cool things we can do. And you start attaching yourself to that worth, to what you do. And I didn't fully realize how much of my confidence was attached to that role until things started falling apart. Know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly. That's Epictetus. Epictetus was a slave. He had no patch, no title, no career, nowhere to hide behind. Yet he understood something that most of us never figure out until something breaks. Who you are cannot be something someone else can take from you. But I hadn't built that yet, and my identity lived as a role. To take you back to what I said about taking you back, the situation started after I submitted a complaint against one of the instructors. Things were being said about me that weren't true. The environment had become hostile, unprofessional, and I expected the process to help me resolve things. After the complaint was handled, nothing really changed. And after that, I could feel the environment shift around me. Just like little subtle things, energy changes, interactions change. I felt more increased scrutiny. Trust had changed, whether intentional or not, I could feel it. Eventually, I made a mistake. The mistake itself mattered, but my response to the mistake mattered even more. When I got brought up to leadership, I didn't own it correctly. I explained it instead of owned it. And there's a real difference between those two things. Implementing extreme ownership requires checking your ego and operating with a high degree of humility, says Jocko Willink. My ego was at the bottom. My ego was in the room before my accountability was. And that cost me. And Seneca 2,000 years ago wrote about exactly this trap. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you need is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. That's Seneca, letters from a Stoic. I kept trying to explain my way out of the situation, but the situation wasn't the problem. I was. The work was internal, and I had to be ready to do it. Context always matters, right? But ownership comes first, always. And sometimes over-explaining it sounds like avoidance, even when it's not your intention. And that was a really hard lesson for me. I really wish I would have read some books before all of this, because I would have learned. That was a real hard lesson to learn in real time. After that, I was put on an improvement plan. One scenario, pass, fail, and I'm terminated. By that point, deep down, I had already seen the writing on the wall. And I think most people have felt something like this at some point. It's not just in jobs or relationships or organizations or your teams, but the environment shifts before the outcome is officially announced. Marcus Aurelius wrote this in his private journals, no audience, just by himself. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Instead of using the pressure as fuel, I let it collapse me inward. I started playing not to lose instead of playing to win. I remember walking into work, constantly overthinking everything, replaying every conversation, every second guessing myself on everything, trying not to make the mistake instead of just performing naturally. And Seneca nailed exactly what I was doing to myself. He said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." I had already failed the scenario in my head way before I walked into that room, because I think pressure changes people, especially when you feel like every move is being watched. So the day of the scenario comes. I generally thought I did really well. I really did. I checked all my boxes. I did all the interventions. I did everything according to what I thought was right. There was multiple evaluators, including leadership. And when it was over, they told me I had made mistakes that they were not comfortable with. And just like that, I was terminated. For a long time, I wrestled with that. I wrestled with whether that process was completely fair or not. And honestly, I still don't think the situation was only about the mistakes. But here's what Epictetus taught. And this one took me years to actually accept. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Some things were in my power, my preparation, my ownership, my response, my mentality, and some things were not. And staying bitter about what I couldn't control was just another way of letting it keep winning. The harder lesson, the one that actually moved me forward, when scrutiny rises, when the environment turns against you, you better prepare yourself to become fucking deniable. I didn't prepare myself enough for that reality, and that's on me. Losing the job wasn't even the hardest part. I think the hardest part was the identity hit, the embarrassment, the ego, the feeling that people were judging you, the feeling that your career had a stain on it now. And that really hurt. I had worked really hard to get to where I was. And I think people underestimate how emotionally difficult it is when your identity is completely attached to performance, especially in the first responder culture. Because a lot of us are trained to appear composed at all time. So when something shakes your confidence, you suffer, and you suffer quietly. Seneca wrote this in a letter to a friend dealing with grief and loss. It is not that I am brave, but that I know what is not worth fearing. What is worth fearing is this. You have wasted the chance to become who you were really meant to be. Seneca, letters from a Stoic. I keep thinking, if I just got another fly job, the feeling would go away. And when I did, it didn't. But the job was never a problem. I was. The work was internal, and I wasn't ready to do it yet. I went through that mental replay loop, replaying everything, questioning myself. We perform strength publicly, and we carry the weight privately. That is the quiet cost of culture. But over time, distance gives perspective, right? I started to see this experience completely different. So here are 3 things I walked away from the experience knowing. Ownership. Lesson 1. Even when the context exists, even when it feels unfair, when your emotions are high, you have to own it first, every single time. The most important thing is that leaders must own everything. There is no bad teams, only bad leaders, and no excuses. Jocko Willink. And Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself, if it's not right, do not do it. If it's not true, do not say it. 2,000 years apart, same truth. Ownership is not weakness. Ownership is the foundation of character. Lesson number 2, undeniable preparation. Not average preparation, not minimum standard preparation, but completely undeniable. When the environment turns hostile, your preparation has to speak for itself. That's why the philosophers warn us not to be satisfied with more learning, but to add practice and then training. For as time passes, we forget what we learned and end up doing the opposite. I knew the material. I hadn't trained for pressure. Those are 2 completely different things. Lesson 3, identity cannot live inside a profession. Jobs change, titles disappear, organizations, they move on. And if your entire self-worth is attached to a patch or a title, you will collapse every time life changes direction. It's time you realize that you have something in you more powerful and miraculous than the things that affect you. And make you dance like a puppet. That's Marcus Aurelius. Let that one breathe in. That experience forced me to be more emotionally stable. Not just clinically stronger, not just physically tougher, but emotionally steadier. And that lesson served me more long-term than I ever realized at that time. The interesting thing is this. I already had another job lined up. Life didn't end. I adapted. I rebuilt. And I matured. And the thing you think will define your life becomes one chapter and not the whole story. Maturity is being honest enough to recognize when the environment has shifted around you and disciplined enough to prepare for what might come next. Here's another one by Seneca. In one of his final letters written before his own death, he said just 4 words that stopped me cold. Fire tests cold. Suffering tests brave men. Let that sit. That firing was a fire, and I had a choice to make. Let it consume me or let it redefine me. To anyone listening who's going through failures, setbacks, embarrassments, or pressure right now, don't let the moment become your entire identity. Learn from it, own your part, stay calm, keep moving forward. I still think about that day, but I think about it differently now. Because sometimes the hardest professional moments in your life end up teaching you the lessons success never could. I really appreciate you guys being here. Welcome to BLN.